shocked.
Welcome back, Crackle Addicts. I am Lupine Fiasco. This is Daily Fab Gameplay, and I have one more ProQuest report for you for the ProQuest London season. Before we get into it, if you haven't already subscribed to me on YouTube, you can go ahead and do that down below. There are links to my socials in the video description. That would be my Discord, my Twitter, my new Blue Sky account, as well as a link to my Patreon if you'd like to go and check out how you can get my Aurora matchup guide, bonus videos every week, and there is a Fabry link to all of my deck lists, including Aurora. A bit of a different tournament report this week compared to the last two. I was not able to make it out of the store in between rounds to record a little report like I've been doing. A combination of reasons. Number one being, as you'll see, this was a limited ProQuest. I drafted very grindy decks, so my games tended to go long. The second reason being just trying to reduce pressure on myself a little bit. I took my CC ProQuests very seriously, which is good. You want to care about your performance in tournaments, but this was my last shot at getting a PTI for London. And after kind of beating myself up after the last 2 weeks, you might have noticed that in the last report that I gave, I wanted to kind of take it a little easier. Hope that would ease some of my anxiety and increase my mental game, which I 9-0'd the event, so maybe I was onto something. But yeah, 9-0. I played at Weekend Wizards in Lodi, California. It's a 24-man Rosetta draft ProQuest. My preparation going into it was to listen to a single episode of On the Bobble by Yuki Bender and Jay, specifically the Florian episode. I had drafted 5 times with locals leading up to this event, period, since the release of Rosetta. We're not a draft-heavy scene out here in Sacramento, and all 5 times I drafted Florian. The first few times, really forcing it, feeling like I am comfortable, this is where I want to be, I understand what this deck is trying to do. Florian rewards good fundamentals, which I feel that I have after a little over 2 years of playing Flesh and Blood. But the last couple of times, it just seemed like I was in the Florian seat, and so I knew going in that I was probably going to force Florian. It was my comfort zone, it's where I wanted to be. I know that Rosetta pods can support 4 Florian players, and if I was one of 4 Florians and I paired into any of them, I felt pretty good about being able to skill gap them. So went in intending to draft Florian, listened to the On the Bobble episode about drafting Florian, and got a few good tips. The biggest one, which you'll see in the deck lists, I'll put them up as I review the drafts and the pods, was that life gain good. Maybe you don't know this, but if you can gain 30 health over your starting 20 before the end of the game, you're probably going to win. Same as if your deck has a weapon that can actually attack and deal damage, such that you don't fatigue, or you can win with a single card in your deck, then that is good. Surprisingly enough, gaining life is good, and being able to convert 4-card hands against wizards who are only attacking you with arcane damage that you cannot block and have no arcane barrier to pitch to is really strong. To give you some general reflections before we really get into the matches and the draft. Great event. Weekend Wizards ran a fantastic event. It was 2 pods of 8 going into the cut to top 8 third pod. My drafts were Florian, Verdance, Florian. The Verdance draft was really interesting. I was expecting to force Florian. My first 5 picks did lead me in that direction, and before I started to think, well, maybe I should pivot, and the signals were there that I would really not need to try too hard to make Verdance work. I was playing with a bunch of SAC locals. Sacramento did very well in this event. Myself and the other finalist, Maxwell, were both from Sacramento. Maxwell's one of my locals. I did end up taking the win. I will be going to London. I was intending to go to London anyway. I've never been outside the US. A lot of Team Metal Fab will be going to London, so it felt like a good fit, a good time to experience the rest of the world, play the game, see the world, and I would just be a calling gamer. But being qualified for the Pro Tour, huge relief. I was really stressing about it, and qualifying with the rest of my team is really nice because in that week leading up to Pro Tour London, we'll be drafting a ton, getting those reps. It's what we did before Pro Tour Minneapolis as well, and or Nationals Minneapolis, and having to actually care about the draft, having a reason to be good at it, is just a huge benefit. I was always going to practice and care and be a good teammate, but the fact that it is not just meaningless for me as a calling gamer is really nice. So going to London, hoping to see all of you there, and we can get into the drafts. Without a recording of my thoughts after each game, this is going to be a bit truncated, but I have noticed that in draft with 30 cards and a pretty standard game plan, a lot of these games are going to feel samey anyway, so doing all 3 in one I think is actually going to be a little more helpful, a little more viewer friendly. So up on the screen here you see my first draft. This was a Florian deck. Very interesting draft pod. We came out of pack 2 and I had drafted, I believe, yellow Cadaverous Tilling and blue Summersfall, and those were my only 2 decompose cards, and I had a decent blue count. I had drafted the Arcane Seeds, I had the 2 Harvest Seasons, I had a Strong Yield, some Fertile Grounds, and I felt like, alright, well, I've got these Fertile Grounds, I'm playing Florian, I have Seeds, 2 decompose is going to be enough to let me play the game. I can turn on my Helm of Ligma, I can turn on my Well-Grounded, so we're okay. But man, there have got to be 6 other Earth heroes at this table. We are really going heavy into Earth. Turns out, this was a 6 Lightning pod, and in fact, 5 of those Lightning drafters were drafting Aurora. They were all in a row. It was a very weird pod, and the reason that I did not have the density of decomposed cards that I wanted was just that we weren't opening them. I mean, I didn't check with everyone. Maybe someone pack 1 picked one, Cadaverous Tilling or Blossoming Decay, and then saw the signals for Lightning and said, you know what, we're going to pivot off of this, we're going to go into Aurora. But I picked up 4 more decomposed cards in pack 3, which really turned this deck into a monster. If there is one complaint that I would have about this deck, the one thing that I would change is that I would have drafted a few more blues. This deck has 12 blues in it, which I feel is the bare minimum I need to actually function as Florian. My first game against an Aurora was a lot closer than maybe it should have been, just based on drawing hands that were 4 reds or 3 reds and a yellow. Blues really were not making an appearance, and if I want to be able to play a Harvest Season, attack with my Rotwood Reaper, and then play a Fertile Ground in the same turn, I need 3 blues for that. Or if I am going to play Harvest Season, play Cadaverous Tilling, play Fertile Ground, those are lines that my deck can support, but the blue count just really wasn't there, and especially when we're considering that 3 of my decomposed cards are blues, 2 of my Fertile Grounds are blues, my Arcane Polarity is blue, and I want to be playing these cards, not necessarily pitching them. We did get clogged up a bit. After that first game against Aurora, things did smooth out. The deck variation just really took care of itself. Second game was against Acilio, the one of Wizard at the table, and it was a very close game, but you can see from the left 2 columns on your screen, and then Polarity and Blossoming Decay, even Fiendal's Fighting Spirit, my deck gains an absurd amount of life. I believe if everything is on, if Florian is on and Fertile Grounds are maximizing value, this deck gains over 30 life. Combine that with Helm of Ligma, blocking for 1 or 2, Well Grounded, preventing 2. This deck just sustains through Wizard. This deck was drafted to beat Wizard, and it was great because we had one Wizard at the table. I talked about, how would I change this deck? I would draft more blues. I would also just draft Verdance. There were signs earlier that I should have been drafting Verdance, but we're talking multiple red Trailblazing Aethers moving around the table, red Aether Quickenings, red Exploding Aethers. I think my pack 3, pick 14, just the last card in the pack that I'm given because no one else wants it, was red Trailblazing Aether. Like, it was insane how open Wizard was. I would have had a Channel the Millennium Tree. I would have had the same well-grounded Helm of Ligma. I believe a Hold Focus was going around. This deck would have been absolutely cracked, and as it is, it's very good. But it would have been the most absurd Verdance that anyone has ever seen. Game 3 was against the other Florian at the table. He and I drafted very similar decks. I think it was turn 5 or 6 that either of us actually dropped below 20 life for the first time, because all of our turn cycles were like play Harvest Season, attack with Rotwood Reaper, and the other one would block 3, take 1, gain 2 or 3 from their Harvest Season, play a Fertile Ground, attack with Rotwood Reaper or something. It was really like back and forth grind fest, and I did manage to get there. I was able to gain just a little more life. My opposing Florian's Arcane Cussing Deadwood Dirge combo all happened at yellow. You can see mine was happening at red. 4 Cadaverous Tillings is always going to turn into a really strong late game. Plus 2 blue, Strength of 4 Seasons. I mean, this deck was built to grind, and we could really do it. But big shout out to all of the life gain. Double red Harvest Season, Arcane Seeds life, 2 red Fertile Grounds, 3 Fruits of the Forest. Blue Fertile Ground was really my MVP for the day, really my overperformer. I did not expect that card to be as good as it is. And again, shout out to the On the Bobble podcast for just teaching me, like, you don't need to wait until your Fertile Grounds is online to play it. It's still just 2 life. And if you're pitching your blue Fertile Grounds early and then drawing them late, it might be 3 life, but even at 2 life, it's fine, and you're going to be okay against Wizard. So this deck was really good. This deck put me in the 3-0 bracket going into Pod 2. This was not a 5 Aurora pod, as you can imagine. Here's the deck that I drafted. This one was Verdance, and you can see in that left-hand column maybe why I thought Verdance would be such a good pick, and why the deck felt just really as good as it was. We had, obviously, a ton of go again at Arcane, and if you are unfamiliar with this draft format, there is no way to interact with arcane damage outside of your Sanctuary of Aria and your runaway equipment, but that requires you to have already taken damage. So if your opponent pitches a blue into Staff of Verdant Shoots, amps a Trailblazing Aether to 4, and that's the first time they're dealing damage to you this turn, you cannot interact with it aside from your Sanctuary of Aria. There is no arcane prevention outside of well-grounded. So this deck was intended to be Florian. I picked up the Helm of Ligma, I picked up some Decompose early. You can see these 2 blue strong yields were picked up in the first 5 picks of the draft, and that was really the first indicator that, hey, maybe Florian is not the pick. Like, maybe Earth is kind of being cut here, and the decision to switch into Verdance really started with pack 1 pick 6, where I was between red Trailblazing Aether and blue Hocus Pocus. So one of the best Wizard commons compared to a blue block 3, which would have made a Runeblade deck, but if I'm just comparing card quality, Trailblazing Aether gets it. And if I am considering why Trailblazing Aether is still in this pack in pick 6, that's a pretty strong indicator that Wizard is open. So I did deviate from the plan, went into Verdance, got very rewarded for it, picking up another red Trailblazing Aether, 2 red Aether Quickenings, a bunch of go again outside of that, and then a few red zaps. We've got the Arcane Twining, Pop the Bubble, Perennial Aether Bloom, Photon Splicing red, just a 1 for 4. We play Scalding Rains. And then Yellow Photon Splicing was really there for the discard effect. Pop the Bubble was surprisingly relevant at one point in the game. We've got 5 Earth Blues that we can pitch into Staff of Verdant Shoots. We have more blues overall that we can pitch just to amp. Helm of Ligma came in clutch. Bruised Leather and Runaways were just good. The one problem this deck had was that it does not heal very much. We've got the 2 red Harvest Seasons. We've got a Life Meld over in the red column there. We've got a Blossoming Decay, but that's kind of it. And especially if we're comparing it to our Florian deck from Pod 1, which gained 30 life. This deck gains, 8? Which was enough to get me there through a Florian game with a particularly slow start, but really, not where you want to be with Verdance. And I remember passing a few Fertile Grounds. The blues and yellows, nothing incredible, but would have been enough to make this deck substantially better, especially the blue Fertile Grounds being Earth Blues that I can pitch into Staff of Verdant Shoots, or that gain me 2 life in a pinch if I really need it to. Through this pod, I beat my teammate in round 1 on his Acilio, just a real stinker, real piece of shit. Austin, come on, man, what are you doing? What are you doing drafting these just abysmal metal fab tokens, really not sending their best, to this event. A really, really poor showing from calling top 8 competitor Austin Kim. Just really, what an absolute disgrace. So beat him round 4. Round 5 and 6 were both against Florians, and this really highlighted, hey, maybe Florian is not a great matchup into Verdance because he just can't deal with arcane damage. My Florian in round 5 gained a bunch of life, and it was enough to keep him alive for a lot of the game. But if he was gaining life, he wasn't dealing damage, and so I was not under any pressure. I never really had to worry about blocking with my arcane spells, so I could keep these hands that would pitch a blue into Staff of Verdant Shoots, fire off an Aether Quickening for 5, and then Photon Splicing for 4, and just deal 9 arcane damage in a turn. You cannot interact with it, and hopefully you can convert 4 cards on offense, because if you can't, you are just going to take an intellect penalty. And round 6 against Florian was even more of that. The same real problem for my Florian opponent, but with even less life gain. So this deck felt aggressively medium, but I'm also thinking I don't have a good barometer for what a good Verdance deck looks like because I've never drafted the deck. This was my first time drafting Verdance. I just knew Trailblazing Aether and Aether Quickening are good cards, and we drafted a bunch of them. I believe this table had 3 wizards in it. The 2 Acilio drafters were sitting right next to each other, and while Acilio can use Aether Quickening and Trailblazing Aether, he's looking for really his Open the Floodgates, lightning attacks, sigils, flashes, cards that Verdance does not care about. And so there were absolutely times where Acilio would take, Open the Floodgates instead of Trailblazing Aether or Aether Quickening, and then they come to me and I'm in a great spot. So 6-0 at the end of the second pod, going into the top 8 cut, and it was time for our third draft pod, and here was that deck. Again, another Florian. Probably my worst deck of the day, which is not to say it's a bad deck. Clearly it wasn't. It was enough to 3-0 the pod, but does not gain nearly as much life as the first Florian deck. does not have the density or quality of Decompose that the first Florian deck did. It honestly is not a great comparison because I was one of 2 Earth Florians in Pod 1. Here, I believe we had 3 Florians and 5 Earth heroes overall. So the card quality was really, cut. That said, all of the Earth decks were mostly similarly powered, and so my path of Verdance, Florian, Verdance took me against decks of similar quality, which is how I was not just blown out by people with better cards. The well-grounded here came from Pack 1 Pick 2. My Pack 1 Pick 1 was Red Rootbound Carapace. My Pack 1 Pick 2 was between well-grounded and Yellow Rootbound Carapace. And in hindsight, Yellow Rootbound would have been a better pick. I would have had 5 Decomposers instead of 4. I have enough Earth cards that I could have gotten them into discard pretty early and been able to hit those early Decomposes, which would have been great. It means my Oath of the Arknights are making 2 Rune Chants. It means my 3 Sigil of Deadwoods are making 2 Rune Chants each. But what ended up being the case is that well-grounded was crucial to beating the 2 Verdances, because well-grounded can stop a Verdant Shoot's Surge. And in the first game I played against Verdance, it was critical for keeping me alive at the end of the game. It let me aggressively use my Sanctuary of Aria to stop a big Surge effect, and then have well-grounded to stop the smaller Surge effect that was coming to let Verdance convert a full hand, and then give me the opportunity to crack back because I got to keep 4 cards. And in the finals against Verdance, it was crucial for stopping Trailblazing Aether with a Surge effect. I took 0 from an amped Trailblazing Aether, Verdance IPs herself, and then I get to throw a bunch of damage with my 4 cards. This deck did gain enough life to keep me alive through 2 Verdances. Really, my finals were like just drawing life gain that I forgot that I had in the deck. Oh, hey, it's a blue Fruit to the Forest. I forgot this was here. Hey, it's the blue Fertile Ground that I pitched 5 turns ago that I knew was coming back up. So round 1, very tight Verdance game against another SAC local, Nick Botchus. Really good game. Really appreciated getting to play against him in top 8. He's just busy with life, doesn't live in my area, so I don't see him a ton. Always great to see Nick out at events. Game 2 was against, again, Austin on Florian. Just a real stinker, real absolute, disaster of a deck, real piece of shit. Come on, Metal Fab, let's get it together on recruitment, all right? We gotta find better people than top 8 competitor, than multiple ProQuest winner, 5-time top ProQuest top 8, Austin Kim. Just an absolute disaster of a player, and really an absolute disaster of a human, if I'm being honest with you. Just really got to replace that guy for sure. So beat Austin in the Florian Mirror. And in the finals, as I said, played against our local Maxwell. This was a Verdance game. I gotta say, as good as my Verdance decks were into Florian, part of that is just knowing what Florian is supposed to be doing, and so we had the life gain for that. Maxwell was cut on a lot of that go again. Very few Aether Quickenings and Trailblazing Aethers, so if he is just sending, block 6, amp for 4, okay, that's fine. You're spending 3 cards per turn cycle. I'm probably spending 2. So we are trading life totals, but I am ahead on the fatigue race, and that was kind of the theme of the day for me. Just for whatever reason, as an aggro player, I somehow am very good at putting myself ahead in fatigue battles as Florian in Rosetta Draft. Maxwell did have a incredible Surge Amp 9 or Amp 7 for 9 arcane damage, where he put together a red Fertile Ground into Regrowth Life. It was very good. I was at 10, was able to go down to 1, gained 3 from a blue Fertile Ground played on my turn, and then was able to find blue Fruit to the Forest and even Red Harvest season later in the game to just stabilize, stay alive. Got Maxwell with the fatigue through damage, make it so that he has to block to stay alive, and then the card that he has left is like Perennial Aether Bloom for 2, no way to surge it, and I still have 6 cards left in my deck at 7 life. So we were able to put it away with Florian here, and 9-0 the pod. I'll be seeing you all in London. Got the PTI. Maxwell and I did work it out where let's make sure everyone walks away with something. So he got the gold foil.
All right, Maxwell.
Oh yeah.
First gold foil.
Let's go.
What do we got?
You know how to do this, right? Yeah. I open it. I just like pull it out. It's backwards.
Yeah.
Snapdragon.
Snapdragon's be set.
Quarterfrost.
2, 3.
Okay, that's a good one.
Okay, it's playable.
Yeah.
So overall, really great weekend, really great season for me. As salty as I am that I was not able to take a ProQuest down with Aurora, I can't complain about taking one down at all, punching my ticket to London. Part of it is I just see myself as a constructed player, and so not doing well in constructed really, irks me, rankles me, and then surprises me when I do well in limited because I don't see myself as a limited player. But objectively, and part of it is I've won, so I have had a pressure removed from me. The blinders have come off. Objectively, a really good season for me. This was my first ProQuest season where I at least top 8'd every event that I went to. I only went to 3. Could have easily got into a 4th event if I hadn't skipped Turlock in week 1. But there was a 5th draft event that I could have played in as well. Going 3 for 3 top 8 is really good. Makes me feel great. And this wasn't like squeaking in as 8th seed. I was hitting the upper seeds pretty consistently. What was it? 1st seed yesterday, 3rd seed in Sacramento, and then 5th seed in Vacaville. So that feels great. If I am losing in Swiss, we're pushing those losses back into the later rounds of the day, which is great. Getting to choose whether you go 1st or 2nd in top 8 is a huge benefit. And it was something that I was noticing about my play in earlier RTN seasons, was just that I was losing in round 1, putting myself into a position where I'm lower seed and really disadvantaged in top 8. So sending those losses to later in the day feels great. Consistently top 8ing feels great. Overall, just seeing a lot of improvement in myself, really putting in the work and getting the results. So this was a good ProQuest season for me. Looking forward to practicing for Portland. Probably taking it a little easier this week while we wait for Worlds to shake out, see what that Portland meta is going to look like, especially waiting to see what the banned and suspended announcements look like. Maybe High Octane is on the table, and if High Octane or hopefully Spark of Genius were to go from Dash.io, well, that's a matchup I really don't have to worry about anymore. I've heard whisperings that Count Your Blessings might be on the table. I am a lot more skeptical that would go. I doubt that Count Your Blessings gets banned, but say there's a world where Count Your Blessings does get banned after Worlds, and suddenly I can take Poison the Well out of my deck. But even more than that, so many mid-range decks come back into play that are currently unplayable because they cannot deal 94 points of damage. And maybe now I have to worry about Riptide, maybe I have to worry about Bravo and Victor, and decks that I do not think Aurora is favored into. So we'll definitely be practicing this week. We are in that end run up to Portland now, but certainly next week, after the shakeout from Worlds and Banned and Suspended, we'll be working a lot harder to top 8 in Portland. And from there, kind of just chilling. My next big event after Portland is going to be the RTN season starting in February. That's an entire set away. So this was really my prep for Portland, and Portland will be the culmination of my competitive 2024. And so far things are going really well. So I know this was extemporaneous, just off the cuff. Still enjoyed giving you the rundown. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If so, be sure to harvest that like button in this season. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you have not already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free. Helps me a lot. Follow me on Twitter or on Blue Sky. Join my Discord. Check out the Patreon. And catch me again next time for more daily Fab gameplay. Until then, take care.